Welcome to AIMTV. I'm Nijone Dalton from the Navajo Nation, Big Water Clan. So basically, we're here today to say the American Indian movement is still very much alive. We're still in the struggle, progressively moving things about. Let's take a listen from some words from Vernon Belcourt, who, just to give you a little background information, was an original founder of the AIM movement. So let's take a look at that.
The question was asked by journalists that came to the Ogallala Lakota Nation, commonly called Pine Ridge, which is the place where Wounded Knee is located. In 1973, they always asked the question, what is the American Indian movement and what is going on at Wounded Knee? And I think this, in these words by Virgil Killstraight, in response to Richard LaCourse's question, goes something like this, which I think appropriately answers the whole question about the American Indian movement exploding on the scene in 1968 and how we've changed things forever and brought back this whole spiritual cultural rebirth or spiritual cultural renaissance. Killstraight said something like this: things will never be the same again. And that's what the American Indian movement is all about. They are respected by many, hated by some, but they are never ignored. They are the catalyst for Indian sovereignty. They intend to raise questions in the minds of all, questions that have gone to sleep in the minds of Indians and non-Indians alike. AIM was born because a few knew that it was enough to endure for themselves and all others like them who were people without power or rights. From the outside, AIM people are a tough people. They had to be. The American Indian movement was born out of the dark violence of police brutality and the voiceless despair of Indian people in the courts of Minneapolis, Minnesota. AIM people have known the insides of jails, the long wait, the no appeal of the courts for Indian people because many of them were there. From the inside, AIM people are cleansing themselves. Many have returned to the old traditional teachings, ceremonies, way of life of their tribes, away from the confused notions of a society that had made them slaves of their own unguided lives. AIM is first a spiritual movement, a religious rebirth, and then the rebirth of dignity and pride in a people. AIM succeeds because they have beliefs to act upon. The American Indian movement is attempting to connect the realities of the past with the promise of tomorrow. They are a people in a hurry because they know that the dignity of a person can be snuffed by despair and a belt in a cell of a city jail. They know that the deepest hopes of the old people could die with them. They know that the Indian way is not tolerated in white America because it is not acknowledged as a decent way to be. Sovereignty, land, and culture cannot endure if a people is not left in peace. The American Indian movement is then the warriors class of this century who are bound to the bond of the drum, who vote with their bodies instead of their mouths. Their business is hope. This is what Virgil Killstraight had to say about this movement. And I think in those words, it best describes this movement and the importance of this movement, the historical event that took place in Minneapolis on July 19, 1968, when a group of men, women, students, youth, elders came together to form what was to become known as the American Indian Movement. In the early 70s, our people sensed right away that there was something missing from this movement. What was it? What is it about being an Indian person, an indigenous person? And people came to realize in their vision that it was language, culture, traditional spiritual way of life and ceremonies, and a value system that had survived generation to generation among our people until that was disrupted by the Christian missionaries, the white educators, and the federal government, who we declared very early on as the three main enemies of Indian people, and for obvious reasons, because their whole plan was to completely destroy the Indian physically through death marches, starvation, destroying our food supply, cutting down our orchards, wiping out the buffalo. They found out through military aggression they could not eradicate us, even though that was their intent. And so then decided the best way to do it, somebody even said, save the man, destroy the Indian. I don't know who said that, but somebody said that, one of them bureaucrats. Save the man, destroy the Indian. In other words, that was the policy, to send the educators out to teach us their history, which is a very short history in this land, and a very sordid history in the countries of their origins. They were the persecuted who came here. And to take us away from our spiritual leaders, to discredit, demean, degrade our spiritual leaders. Many of our leaders were taken off to prisons like Alcatraz and Leavenworth, and through neglect, ill health, and abuse, many of them died in prisons. That was their policy, to take the leadership, assassinate the crazy horses, the Sitting Bulls, the Wabanakot, our great chief, to assassinate our leaders, the ones they couldn't assassinate, to take them off and put them in prison, and the others through the use of the church, education, and the federal bureaucracy to destroy our spiritual and cultural way of life. And the church has played a role today on most of the reservations, with the exception of the elders, and they do have a responsibility to continue providing for them elders that they've got in their church. But through the American Indian movement of coming to life in 1968, I say coming to life because there was an American Indian movement resistance when Columbus, the colonial pirate, got off the boat, and the Pilgrims got off the boat at Plymouth Rock. The American Indian movement was a manifestation of that long struggle which erupted, and one of the first things that happened in the early 70s, we started to seek out those traditional elders, women and men, who had maintained and kept these ceremonies and the language and the prayer songs intact. And so it was seen then that the American Indian movement is first a spiritual movement, a religious rebirth, and then the rebirth of dignity and pride in a people. And our worst detractors today will tell you that the American Indian movement sparked this renaissance. The powwow, as we know it today in the Ojibwe language, ni mi id to win, means a time to come together, to pray, to give thanks, to feast, to